Trace rifles. They're in the game. But also, are they? I mean, they exist, but, you know, that's it. But one good thing did happen to them recently. They finally got armor mods. That means you can now put on trace rifle ammo finders and scavengers, meaning getting ammo for them is less of a painful experience. So what was the problem before? Well, they use special ammo, but they act like primary style weapons. Without a steady flow of ammo pouring into your gun, this made them tough to use, especially if you were using another special weapon. Using a primary weapon so that you weren't running two special ammo using weapons left you without much of a burst damage option. Now that we have mods for them to make something like special ammo finisher more efficient, you can actually use them as a primary style weapon for an entire activity. Trace rifles have always been pretty good when it comes to their damage capabilities as a primary type weapon, so this now begs the question, are they worth using? I played several Nightfalls on Master to find out, with most of my trace rifles being in between 1316 and 1320, with my overall level being 1330, which is 10 levels under Master in this season. The trace rifles I tested were Divinity, Prometheus Lens, Coldheart, and Wavesplitter. Part of the reason I did not use Ruinous Effigy is because someone was already using it, and part of it was also that the main destructive force behind Ruinous Effigy are the transmutation orbs that spawn after a kill. People aren't exactly using Ruinous Effigy for the trace rifle portion of the weapon, but it does very well in that regard. Ruinous Effigy's orbs are also affected by Season 14's Energy Accelerant and Warmind's Decree mods, doubling the damage of the heavy slam attack of the transmutation orb with Energy Accelerant, and it has the ability to spawn a Warmind cell with Decree. Given the description of Energy Accelerant, I don't think this is intentional, although Decree seems considerably more plausible. I didn't want to highlight this too much as I'm assuming there's a fix coming, but it also wouldn't surprise me if Bungie just left it as is, so maybe I do end up making a video. This is why Crown Splitter has been tearing things up as well. Energy Accelerant is working with a lot of things that it probably shouldn't be working with. As a result, Ruinous Effigy orbs are obliterating endgame content enemies. However, the focus of this video is to find out if the trace rifle weapon class as an actual weapon is worth using with these mods. Each one of these weapons has their own strength, and that is solely based on their exotic perk. Wavesplitter can slay individual enemies pretty well if you're good with collecting orbs, and does okay against champions. Coldheart isn't too shabby for champion killing, but isn't as good as killing junk enemies because of the ramp-up effect that needs to happen for it to reach its max potential. Prometheus Lens does pretty well with killing enemies thanks to its perk that restores ammo, and because of the exotic perk that makes a big damage zone the longer you hold down the trigger. I sound like a crazy person. I'm literally just saying what each trace rifle does. Those are just their exotic perks. Alright, well, when was the last time you used Wavesplitter? Yeah, exactly. It's a tough call as to which one I liked the most. Coldheart actually felt pretty good as a champion killing tool, and part of the fun of using a trace rifle for me was using it on champions and bosses and not feeling like you were wasting your ammo doing so. The feeling of beaming a target is really satisfying, and Coldheart can hold its own for trash mobs. Prometheus Lens is going to bring a very consistent trash mob killing experience, whereas Wavesplitter can have some higher highs if you play around Orbs of Power. The issue with Wavesplitter is that it doesn't have a catalyst, meaning you can't feed yourself your own orbs, thus you're having to rely on orbs from your teammates, which means you need to run out of the way to collect them sometimes. I'm not saying it can't be done, but if Wavesplitter ever does get a catalyst, look out. Of course, Ruinous Effigy in its current Energy Accelerant form is the clear winner at the moment for Master content. I don't feel comfortable saying how I think it'll do in GMs though. If you can reach your target, you're gonna kill it with the orb. The problem is how consistently you'll be able to reach your target. Even if it's not dealing double damage, in Master content, if you're at level, then I think as long as you're making use of the orbs, Ruinous Effigy has the most destructive potential. The only weapon I really don't recommend using as an actual damage weapon is Divinity. Divinity is going to stay a utility weapon used for stunning overload champions or creating a damage debuff. Its damage is okay, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to trace rifle damage. Otherwise, with the addition of these trace rifle ammo mods, it makes the experience of using a trace rifle considerably more enjoyable because you don't need to spam special ammo finisher as often as you might have used to. Trace rifles also do a lot more damage than your typical primary weapon, and I don't think a lot of people realize this. Their rate of fire is 1,000 RPM, and their damage is very strong. The main problem with trace rifles right now in higher end content is the main problem that most primary weapons have nowadays in higher end content. There's no champion mods for them right now. Season 14 only has one special weapon capable of stunning a champion, everything else is a primary weapon, and one of them is a sidearm. So using a trace rifle means you would need to either not run any champion mods, or you would need to run double primary. Double primary isn't the worst thing this season because of all the grenade launcher based mods, so running Anarchy for all your champion, oh wait, all of the trace rifles are exotic, so your exotic slot is also used up on the trace rifle. Would really like to see auto or trace rifle anti-barrier rounds next time. In non-endgame content, trace rifles have simply been made more accessible. Their raw damage is really good. I really like running Wavesplitter. But when it comes to running them in Master or GM content, I don't know how much I can really suggest it unless you have two teammates who don't mind doing a lot of or all of the champion stunning work. You absolutely will not be a detriment when it comes to killing stuff, but you will be when it comes to stuns outside of any utility stuns on the seasonal artifact. When Master VOG comes out, I think trace rifles might be a little bit of a sleeper primary weapon if you're not using Trinity Ghoul or Huckleberry or something like that. PvP, on the other hand, wow. You can now actually use trace rifles as a primary weapon if you run double scavenger. If you want to run an actual special weapon and do double special, your starting ammo will leave a bit to be desired, but special ammo isn't too tough to grab once things get going in a match. Plus, running with a primary weapon only nets you 50 shots in the mag instead of 25, which could be the difference maker, but I found myself just opting for a sniper anyway. At first, my experience was, oh, wow, this is gonna be a problem. A big problem. I am destroying people. We ran out of medals after joining a game where we were losing by 50. I was fragging. And then I crashed right back down to reality after some lobby balancing and being completely unable to get ammo in a match. And that is the main trade-off of using trace rifles. Yeah, imagine that, trade-offs in Destiny. If you're unable to get ammo, you will be running around all match, trying not to die, like an idiot, looking for ammo. Certain maps are fine, Cauldron, Anomaly, Endless Veil, but as you get to bigger and bigger ones, it can get a little more difficult because you're so vulnerable to attack. People greatly underestimate the kill speeds that can happen while using a trace rifle. I had some people swap to a trace rifle in the middle of a match because I was just frying them with it. It can kill fast, faster than autos, faster than a good amount of pulses. Scouts, they rival SMGs, faster than hand cannons. They do work. Prometheus Lens also has very solid hipfire capabilities. I mean, I guess they technically all do. But I just felt more comfortable hipfiring Prometheus Lens as opposed to other trace rifles. If I were to recommend a particular trace rifle for PvP, it's probably going to be Prometheus Lens. Coldheart and Wavesplitter are also fine. Divinity's not the play, and Ruinous Effigy works. I suppose you could try to ball slam some people if you really wanted to do that for fun, but, you know, shotguns and animation locks and all that. The main thing for Prometheus is the ammo restoration after a kill. Overall, though, either trace rifles are still flying well under the radar, or maybe they're just not as strong as I've maybe made them seem, but I do think there is a lot of untapped potential floating around in both PvE and PvP. In most PvE activities, trace rifles are going to tear through whatever's in front of them, and if they ever get a seasonal champion mod, then I do think they're going to take off. If we ever see a legendary trace rifle with damage equal to the exotic ones, whatever that might look like, then they might also take off there too. PvP-wise, pretty under the radar, but it takes a bit more effort to use them compared to all of the spammy garbage that's usable right now. People do not expect to see them. It's very jarring being hit by one, and they kill much faster than I think people really realize. If scavenger mods ever do get nerfed in PvP though, unless an exception is made for trace rifles, I think it's relatively safe to say that trace rifles will go back into my vault. Try them out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Plus, when was the last time you really used a trace rifle that isn't Divinity? Let's be honest. Come on. Try it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.